Национальная библиотека Республики Коми представляет «Арктические портреты». Видеобеседа с куратором Национального музея искусств Гренландии. На 64-й параллели северной широты на побережье, омываемом теплым течением, расположился уютный городок Нук, столица Гренландии, зеленой земли. В городе около 17 тысяч жителей, что составляет примерно треть населения всей Гренландии. Это самая маленькая столица в мире. Однако население потихоньку прибывает. Для многих перспектива жизни на острове кажется привлекательнее по сравнению с жизнью в перенаселенной Европе. И местная экзотика хороша, и величественная природа. Столица Гренландии Нук расположена в арктической зоне, в 240 километрах от Северного полюса. Прежнее название города – Готхоб, что на датском языке означает «добрая надежда». Столица располагается в юго-западной части острова, где море Лабрадор никогда не замерзает. Город лежит у залива одноименного фьорда, который прекрасен в любое время года. Напомним, что Гренландия – крупнейший остров мира. Для сравнения, она в 5 раз больше нашей Северной Республики Коми или в 49 раз больше Дании, страны, которой официально принадлежит эта территория. Как у любой самостоятельно управляемой автономии, у Гренландии есть флаг, симпатичный и грозный герб и правительство. Оно располагается в этом красном домике. Есть официальный язык. Нет, не датский, как можно подумать, а гренландский. И целых 4 диалекта. Это один из языков эскимоско-алеутской группы, и на нем говорят 90% жителей Гренландии. Надо пояснить, что коренные народы Аляски, Канады и Гренландии называют себя по-разному. Название эскимосы, едящие сырое мясо, придумали индейцы. Сегодня так называют народ Аляски. В Канаде предпочитают зваться инуитами, что переводится как «человек». В Гренландии же живут гренландцы. Как мы представляем себе коренных гренландцев? Так? Или, может быть, так? Послушайте, как звучит счет от 1 до 10 на чистейшем гренландском языке.
Атаасақ, марлук, пингасут, сисамат, таллимат, арфиниллит, арфинермарлук, арфинерпингасут, qulingilluat, qullit.
Гренландский язык – отдельное достояние Зеленого острова, поэтому заимствованные слова часто заменяют короткими описаниями. Например, компьютер на гренландском языке означает «искусственный мозг», а картофель – это то, чего долго ждут, пока оно вырастет. Пожалуй, самый знаменитый человек в истории города Нук – это Ханс Эгеда, лютеранский священник датско-норвежского происхождения и первый епископ Гренландии. Ровно 300 лет назад, в 1721 году, он прибыл на остров как миссионер вместе с другими колонистами. Этот скромный дом – музей первого миссионера. Сохранились собственные карты и рисунки Эгеда. А так, возможно, он стоял на берегу, глядя вдаль, ожидая прибытия датских кораблей с новыми колонистами. В Гренландии Ханс Эгеда почитается как национальный святой, а еще в его честь назван кратер на Луне. На этом наше короткое вступление заканчивается, и мы отправляемся в исторический центр арктической столицы, чтобы полюбоваться арктическим искусством. Наш визит в Национальный музей искусств города Нук для виртуального знакомства с недавно открывшейся выставкой 3 художниц. Их имена – Кристин Дайхман, Ода Исбранд и Эллен Логер-Тельбюцер. Выставка называется «И жена». Куратор музея Стина Лундберг-Хансен готова рассказать, чем примечательна эта выставка и куда сегодня движется арктическое искусство.
Hi.
Hey,
Lovely to see you.
you too. So I placed myself in the exhibition.
Aha,
It
you
works.
are now right at the exhibition.
I'm right at the exhibition. I thought that
Excellent.
might be funny.
Nice. What's the weather like today in Nuuk?
It's kind of gray, but no wind, and a couple of below zero, I think, a couple of -degrees below zero, so it's quite nice.
We have -20. Yesterday it was -35. And what time is it in Nuuk?
It's 10 o'clock in
10
the
o'clock.
morning, yeah.
4 p.m. in the afternoon here in Syktyvkar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stine, for being a guest of the National Library of the Komi Republic today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, we are talking about the exhibition of 3 female artists. How would you introduce them to the audience who know very little about Greenland and very little about Greenlandic art? It's a very hard task. Yes.
It is a very hard task. It is 3 women who travels Greenland. One of them lives in Greenland from 1900 up until World War II in different periods. All 3 of them are following their husband, and all 3 of them are artists. One of them is a sculptor. She also does painting, but her primary material is sculpturing, and that is what she is educated in.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 2 does painting, things, watercolors, pencils, and yeah, and one of them oils too.
Are they
Yeah.
all of Danish descent?
They are all Danish, and they come to Greenland as Danish and as part of the colony. At that time in Greenland, you cannot travel Greenland just as you like. You have to ask permission and get permission from the Danish authorities to go to Greenland, as it's a colony under the Danish rule. So not a lot of people came to Greenland back then. But the Greenlandic art history is not like a linear one where you can say it started there and now we're here. It's more like different kind of stories, different kind of trails. And one of those trails is all these expedition painters, artists from Denmark and from Europe, coming between 1850 and 1950, so a span of 100 years. And they're traveling Greenland with different expeditions, missions, but similar to all of them is that they're male and they're from Denmark. Some of them got the name Greenland painter, and they present Greenland to Europe before photography really took on. Their works of art are between an artistic process and they're documenting Greenland.
Like ethnographers would do, like researchers and ethnographers.
Exactly. And what we typically see in these male painters' view on Greenland is these vast landscapes, these Arctic sceneries, kind of romantic, nostalgic. There's a longing for nature in these European men's view on Greenland. They do people in national costumes. They're interested in the old Inuit way of living, and they also, think of Inuit as nature people. Mm-hmm. So there's a longing back to nature in many of their paintings, and also in kind of what they define as the old kind of living, because between 1850 and 1950. A lot of things happening. A lot of the old ways of living are changing. People are stop being nomads and settles in small cities, towns, settlements, and a lot of things in the colony also changes the way Denmark administrates Greenland. And I'm not a historian, so I won't go into that. These painters see that a way of living is kind of receding or passing away, so they want to paint them. These 3 women kind of fits into that trail of Greenlandic art history. As they are coming to Greenland, they are Danish artists, except that they are not on any mission. They are not here to document. They're not here to collect ethnographic material in any way. They are traveling with their husbands as artists, and in that way, their way of working is more free. They can do different things. They have no obligations to do a specific kind. So they both belong in that trail, but they also challenge that trail or that male gaze on Greenland, which today is also seen as very problematic. Because
I really like the phrase male gaze. It sounds nice.
It is a male gaze. There's a lot of male gaze on Greenland, because all of these scientific expeditions in the late 19th century and beginning of the 20th century is mostly done by males. There are no females on these expeditions, except if they use, most of the expeditions use Inuits as help, and some of them are women. But it is a male gaze on Greenland.
And could you name these three artists?
Yes.
Just to pronounce their names correctly for me.
There's Christine Deichmann, who's the only one living here. She lives in Greenland from 1901 till 1910.
9 years, impressive.
9 years. And her husband is a doctor working in Greenland. And then there's Ennelogger Talbitzer. And she's the wife of William Talbitzer, who's a really renowned scientist, linguist, and all kinds of things. And his collection or his work has done a lot to. Is kind of. I have been told by a historian that he is one of the great pillars in the Greenlandic history. The work he has done. And then there's Oda Isbrand. And Ennelogger Talbitzer, she travels here in 1905, and she stays a winter in east of Greenland, eastern Greenland, in what is today known as Basilak. And Oda Isbrand, she's later than the other two. She travels Greenland in 1935, and she travels with her husband, which is an artist and a renowned artist at that time. So all of them are traveling with these kind of famous or men.
So we have the wife of a researcher, the wife of an artist, and the wife of a doctor.
Yes.
And that's the name for the exhibition, and a wife.
Yeah.
Or would you say and a spouse in a more formal way?
No, yeah, maybe, but og hustru, nulialo, as it's called in Greenlandic, and actually we have spelled it in the old Greenlandic way with the O at the end. Today it's spelled with a U. Is quite the way they are referred in text. For example, in the diary of William Talbitzer. My wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on this name of the exhibition? It's brimful of meaning. And what do you want to say by it? Why is it relevant? And the wife.
Yeah. We want to say. We had a lot of discussions on what to name this, because what we want with the exhibition is to put spotlight on these three artists as artists, and not as wives, and not as footnotes in their husbands' diaries or whatever, but as being something on their own, in their own, having a room of their own, to quote Virginia Woolf. So we had a lot of discussions on what to call it, and this was just, it was nice to pronounce it. That is also when we talk about exhibitions, it should be kind of easy to remember. And then we actually are playing on that. We want to say the opposite, but the situation is that the case is that most of the information we've got about these three artists we get through the husbands, and that's especially according to or about Isbrand. We only know something about her through her husband. That way she is recorded. And Enlocker Talbisa also stands in the shadow of her. A little different with Christine Deichmann, but all of them is like, that we wanted them to step out. And then the other part of the exhibition is that these three women didn't paint vast landscapes, romantic sceneries, national costumes, hunting, dog sledging, all these things the male painters did. They are painting women and children. They are painting everyday life. With Christine Deichmann, you can have the feeling that she just went out the door and found someone sitting over something and she drew it. It was not quite the way she did, but that's the feeling you get from that. So, and there's an intimacy in all their portraits. It's like woman to woman, woman to child. It's human beings there. So that part of it is also, it's to put spotlight on these kind of forgotten women, and also their subjects, that they're painting something no one else did, and not even the Greenlandic artists at that point. The third part of this heading for the exhibition title is that before 1940, we do not know of any Inuit Greenlandic artist being women. All the artists we know of is male Greenlandic art. And we also wanted to put a focus on that, because that is kind of curious. Why do we not have, for example, an Aron from Gangek, which is a renowned artist from the 19th century, who did all these woodcuts and watercolors, different things of mythologies, legends, everyday life, and hunting, and all these kind of things. Why do we not have any women doing that? We have a lot of men, but we have no women. Today we have a lot of female artists in Greenland, but not before 1940. And that is a different trail in the Greenlandic art history. It is all these, like Aron from Gangek, self-taught artist who gets paper, pen, brushes, which comes with the colony. It was not something you could buy in Greenland at that time, so you needed someone to bring it to Greenland and give it to you. You couldn't buy paper, pen, brushes, canvases in the shops. And maybe it was mostly males working in the colony. Maybe they gave it to other males. We don't know. So somehow we do not have any Greenlandic female artists before 1940. And that with the title, we also want to put focus on that. So it's a women focus.
So if we reconstruct your title and make it longer, it will be the artist and the wife painting Inuit women with a female gaze and focusing on this culture, on this, not on family, children, women, rather than landscapes and ice cap.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think
beautiful.
The female gaze would be, if you should take something out of my long talk here, it should be the female gaze, to put spot on that in different kind of ways.
Let's have this female gaze. Out of these three, I think Christine Deichmann's works are particularly impressive in documenting culture through art. Let's have a look at two pieces at least and talk about her view, her gaze. First, a woman with two children. I think this is the most popular.
First of all, I think the question is interesting because you do feel like she's documenting kind of women and children. but we can see from her sketches that she do not, these works is not necessarily as she saw them. She might have put people together from different sketches and placed them and said, this is a good subject for this painting. And we can see that in that painting. We know that the girl eating a dried seal, and she has painted her in a sketch where she's sitting on the ground with her legs stretched out. So we know that she has kind of composed it from different sketches. And that is a very important part of Christine Deichmann. That is that she is constantly processed. And I think what we do not have any thoughts of these. We do not know what they thought about their own art. There's been no books published about their art. So we are on kind of virgin ground right now, trying to feel our way and look at the artworks. But what we can see from her sketches to the works, finished works of art, is that she's kind of doing this artistic processing where she kind of repeating different positions of bodies. It seems like sometimes she has this sleeping woman, and she has a boy in a different sketch sitting in the same way. And some of it I think what she's interested in is this absorption, this concentration, that people are sitting there doing something, and we can't always see what she's doing. She has this series of children sitting with something in their hands, and we can't really see, is it a bird, is it a flower, is it some kind of toy? We can't see, but they're absorbed, they're kind of doing something with it. And the point is not what they're doing. She's not there to document, this is what Greenlandic children do. She just doesn't care about that. It's that absorption that they're concentrated. She kind of creates these spaces or rooms of their own where people are engaged in something. And with that work of art you're pointing to, it's an intimate moment between a mother and two of her children, and they're eating something, and she's kind of taking care of it. And the boy looks out at us, and we get eye contact with him, and he's kind of saying, you're disturbing us, or don't go any closer. So she also, you know, they are not ethnographic objects she's painting for us to study. They are persons doing something, and we can look at what they're doing, but we do not get access to what they're doing. So she kind of creates, these rooms of their own and these absorbed spaces, which is a subject or a motive that goes way back into art, Western art history, and especially in the late 19th century in Danish art history, a lot of female artists takes this subject about these absorbed spaces and paints that. So she's kind of part of her time doing this. But what I think is also interesting when she does this is that she kind of eliminates the background. We do not exactly know where they are. She's not interested in the physical space around them. She's interested in that space, the body's kind of mark.
Like an aura. Aura around these three people. And what really catches the eye, that they're not dressed in national Inuit costumes, especially the boy on the right. What will be the name for these high boots in Greenlandic?
The kamik. And that is interesting with all three of these, and especially Oda Isbrand and Christine Deichmann, is that they are not they are actually painting what they see. They do not paint an image of what Greenland should be like, the romantic image of old days that some of these male gazes really dive into. And it's really problematic also with these painting these old days as they think it should look like. but they're painting because when Christine Deichmann, Talbitzer, Ulla Isbrand is in Greenland, European fabrics is already a part of everyday life. And it has been for a long time, actually, because Greenland is not an isolated island. There has been ships sailing here, whaling and so on. So there has been a lot of commercial, also before the colony in 1721, or that Denmark colonized Greenland, or starting colonizing. So there has been a lot of exchange and trade, and so the European fabric is a part of everyday life, and Christine Deichmann shows, and that is really interesting, especially with his coat.
That's right. The boy's outfit is absolutely westernized or European, right?
Yeah. And at that time she's painting, there has been trading and exchange with Denmark and other for 200 years. It has been a colony for 200 years. So of course it's not nature, people living in harmony with nature, as some of the male painters seem to want to see. Yeah.
Right. Going to the second portrait of a young woman, young Inuit woman standing by the window. In contrast, she's dressed from head to toe in what we would expect her to look like in her natural environment. What is her story here?
Well, that is also an interesting question, because we do not have any names. They have not named their subjects in any of their paintings. And this woman, actually, Christine Deichmann, we can see she uses her in several sketches. She paints her again and again, doing portraits. But we have no name.
And this particular painting, it looks like a watercolor to me.
Yeah.
It's very pastel, you know, almost transparent. Is it a watercolor?
It's a watercolor, and actually the woman with the two children is also watercolor. She is doing watercolors is her primary
medium
material. But what's interesting about clothes here is the gap between the sealskin shorts and the upper top of the national costume, because you can see her underwear. You can see the white underwear. And actually a historian told me at the exhibition opening that this was high fashion in Greenland at that time, because of that way you showed you had access and could buy European fabrics. So it was kind of a statement.
I just remembered there was at some point in our contemporary history, in fashion, you know, men used to wear their jeans really low to show their Calvin Klein underwear. Do you remember that?
It's the same here, actually. It's the same here. It's just 100 years back, and in Greenland, that you kind of showed the underwear, but what we had inside.
It's a show off.
It's a show off, because of course European fabrics was you had to have something to buy them for, or trade them. So it's kind of a statement. But we do not know the name of her, and maybe that's not interesting. I think the interesting thing about this painting is her gaze, the way she looks at us, and the smile on her lips. It's the same with the boy. We do not. It kind of eliminates them as objects to be studied. It makes them people, because we do not have access. She kind of stops. She's a person, and she looks back. We cannot study her as we like, or just look at her, because there's kind of a connection either between us, the viewers, or between the artist and the subject. So I think and Christine Deichmann uses this in several of her works, and Ulla Isbrand also uses this eye contact, this human to human contact, female to female. There's kind of a bonding of something that that makes it a person with a body language, a mind of its own, a room of its own.
And in the second picture, she also gets rid of the interior, no background. She's just there for you to look at. Yeah. What about people visiting the exhibition? You know, I see that some come alone, some with friends or colleagues maybe. There are also families with children. Did they share their impressions with you or with anyone at the museum? What did they say? How do you think the exhibition affected them or would affect anyone visiting it?
I think some of the comments we got is that people think it's a really beautiful exhibition. The works are really beautiful. This is also kind of important because it shows a different kind of Greenland. Because as living in Greenland, being in Greenland, you get a bit tired of always, because these expedition painters and so on that did this vast landscapes. Sometimes it's the they also created a kind of expectation of what Greenlandic art should be like, and also taking Aron from Gangek, a local artist, he also paints, you know, hunting scenes, dog sledging, everyday life, as he was told it was in the old days. But to get women to look at women is they kind of make a small explosion in all these images of Greenland, because and is this in this way of seeing Greenland as kind of exotic, which is often the way that it's being looked at from Europe, an exotic place with these vast, beautiful landscapes, idea of a nature people living in harmony with nature, but the reality is more complex, more nuanced, and they place some nuance into it. We had 6 students from university, or a group of students from university coming to the exhibition's opening, and they were totally blown away. They thought it was so interesting. So we're hoping that maybe some university student or other wants to dig further into this and see what they can find. Maybe we can find a Greenlandic artist who has been forgotten and is it some attic or archive somewhere. Maybe
would be a great discovery. And what kind of music would you add to your exhibition? What do you think what kind of sound should accompany it, or silence, no sound at all?
I think I would choose silence. I thought a lot about this question and I thought that's interesting, but I think as we were hanging the exhibition, curating the exhibition, we had a lot of works of art. I think we had 100 works of art to choose from, and I think some of them they're kind of small, a lot of them, but they, especially Christine Deichmann, she makes all these pencil drawings, and you think, well, you can just hang them, but actually they take a lot of space. They kind of have this massive around them, or these rooms demanding. So I think I would choose silence or cello, maybe. Yeah, because a cello is like the human voice, played in specific tones.
Range.
Yeah, I think either that.
Good choice. Yes, we don't have much time left, and I really would like to know a little bit about the history of your museum. How did the collection start? It
started by private donation. It was Sven Junge who was this he owned a lot of companies in Nuuk and has built a lot of things, and he also collected art through 50 years. And he and his wife donated their collection of art and bought these 3 buildings. It's an old church.
It looks like a church, especially when you look inside. It has very high ceilings.
Yeah, It is a church. The middle of the museum is a church where you see the tower. And then he built a new exhibition room, which is the one we're exhibiting in and I'm sitting in right now. He built that, and the other part of the museum is the old, where the preacher lived, his house. And it's all built together because after it was a church, it became offices and so on. So it was never meant to be. But Sven Junge, he bought it and he donated his collection of art in 2005 to the municipality of Nuuk. And since then, the municipality has owned the museum and has run the museum. What we're trying today is to tell a bit more about the Greenlandic art history and collect a wider perspective on that. Because there are only two art museums in Greenland. We're one of them, and the other one is in Ilulissat, up north. And both of them are private donations. So that means they are not representing Greenlandic art history in any way. And they are both owned by the municipality. We do not have a national gallery yet. I think we have about 900 works from their collection. 900. And then we have 400 works bought after
I
that.
see. So half or one third is new acquisitions then. Can I ask you about your job as museum curator? Because people may wonder what museum inspectors or museum curators do on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, basically we do everything to run a museum. We do everything from hammering nails into the walls to, for example, shoveling snow, calling handiworkers to do different things on the building. And on the other hand, we are planning exhibitions far ahead. We are fundraising for exhibition, writing articles about art, trying to communicate about Greenlandic art, because we are the place most specialized in Greenlandic art so far.
Do you deal with schools also?
Yeah, I just had a couple of second graders here this morning. So yeah, we do have schools also, universities, high schools, and so on, and private tours and all that. So there's both keeping the museum open. We have student workers working as custodians, opening and closing the museum, but everything planning to keep it open for the museum.
I see. Another difficult question, but just to draw the line. What's the difference between works of decoration and works of art?
I don't think there needs to be a difference. That depends on the eye that sees, because a lot of our collection, for example, is bought to hang above a sofa. It's supposed to look nice. It's what the couple Helene and Sven Junge thought would look good in their living room and what they like to look at. Now it's at a museum, and maybe not all is relevant if you're talking about communicating or exhibiting something about the Greenlandic art history.
Which means we should all decorate our homes with art.
Yes.
Right.
And some of it is nice to look at, some of it provokes us, some of it creates thoughts about it. So I don't think that, because the Greenlandic art history, decoration, and what you would call high art in Europe kind of mixes, and you can't really separate it. I think politically it is really important to separate it, the hobby artist from the professional artist, but in everyday life, just looking at art, using art, I don't think that division is so.
Yeah, I have always wondered why Komi women had to knit these elaborate patterns on their mittens instead of just having gray wool, because they wanted art, they wanted to wear art, they wanted art in their kitchens, on their stoves.
But I think that's the same here, because to go back to this exhibition, before 1940, if we have to look at the Greenlandic female artists missing. They are represented in costume, in
costumes, yeah.
sewing, and in fur, and in all those kind of clothing. They're not represented with names and the year of their birth and so on, but they're represented with their works of hand, and that is also.
What would you say to people living in the Komi Republic, if anything?
I would say thank you for listening or putting interest into a small subject as Greenlandic art is, and this is exhibition is. I hope to learn more about Komi.
Yes, I think probably someday Greenlandic tourists will visit Komi, and Komi tourists will go to Nuuk to look at your new exhibition.
Hope that.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I wish you could have a storm of ideas for new exhibitions and crowds of people attending them and supporting Greenlandic art.
Thank you.
Гренландия и Республика Коми. Нас разделяет 6 часовых поясов. Нас объединяет Север и Арктика. Это повод узнать друг о друге побольше. Галерея закрыта, в городе Нуук ночь, а мы уже просыпаемся навстречу новому дню.